Welcome to Melrose Unitarian Universalist Church. Our service today is called The Transient and the Permanent in Our UU Faith. Thank you. Good morning. Okay, now nobody panic. I know it looks a little odd in here. It's the women's retreat time. All of our women are away. We've had a record-breaking registration this year. 43 women, Jenny told me earlier. Yeah. So most of our people are there this weekend, which is why there are so few here today. But we still have a wonderful worship service planned for you, and maybe some people online are joining us too. Good morning and welcome. So, my name is the Reverend Dr. Susanna Trilligator. My pronouns are she and hers, and I welcome you to this church of open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. All who share our values are welcome here with us, and I hope that you all feel part of this community. Just one announcement for today. Our annual meeting is coming up on Wednesday, May 15th. That's about 10 days from now, exactly. That means our annual report will come out this Wednesday. I hope people get a chance to read it. If you have any questions about your eligibility for voting, please see Nancy, who is conveniently our greeter this morning. Nancy, you want to wave to everybody? There she is. Our worship theme for May is pluralism, which might be a new word for some people. It's, I think, a value that we've always held, but we've never put it in that exact language. This is the text that goes with it. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. That's the language from the new proposed UUA principles, values, which we'll be voting on next month at General Assembly. So that's why I'm preaching about pluralism all the month of May, and in these next 2 Sundays talking about the new UU values. I am hoping, along with the board, that might inspire a few people to step forward and want to be delegates to our General Assembly. This year, GA is all online, so you can go from the safety and comfort of your own sofa. If you're interested in doing that, please let me know. Your opinion matters, and we'd love to have you representing the church there. Just a quick thank you to our helpers today. For coffee hour, Beth and Kelly are our hosts. Thank you. Our usher today is Michael, and our greeter is Nancy. Thank you for your help. And now it's time to welcome one another into worship this morning. Turn and say hello to the person on your left and on your right, behind you and in front of you. Good morning. Give a wave. I'm saying hi to the people on Zoom. Good morning, good morning. We had a few more join us. Just a reminder, it's Women's Retreat Weekend. Yay. I call us to worship this morning with these words from my colleague, the Reverend Joan Javier Duval, our minister in Montpelier, Vermont. She writes, "You are beloved, and you are welcome here. Whether tears have fallen from your eyes this past week or gleeful laughter has spilled out of your smiling mouth, you are beloved, and you are welcome here. Whether you are feeling brave or brokenhearted, defiant or defeated, fearsome or fearful, you are beloved and you are welcome here. Whether you have untold stories buried deep inside or stories that have been forced beyond the edges of comfort, you are beloved and you are welcome here. Whether you have made promises, broken promises, or are renewing your promises, you are beloved and you are welcome here. Whatever is on your heart, whatever it is, however it is with your soul in this very moment, you are beloved and you are welcome here. In this space of welcome and acceptance, commitment and recommitment, covenant and connection, you are welcome. Let us worship now together. We light the symbol of our faith, the flaming chalice. Here to do it again for us this morning is the president of our board, Jenny Wengrovius, because she is going to lead us once again in a new song.
I invite you all now to rise and sing the new doxology that is our mission statement, incorporates our mission statement. We gather, give, inspire, transform, through faith, through love,
Thank you, thank you. And, we'd love to hear your feedback on that. Oh, please be seated. Oh, wait, no, I messed up. That's me. That's me needing more coffee this morning. It's time for our opening hymn. If you would please join together in our opening hymn, which is one of my favorites, Forward Through the Ages. It's number 114, but the lyrics will appear on the screen if you want to just pay attention to that. Thank you, Tom. Oops. Thanks very much, Tom. Now it is time for our story. And today I have some mystery items in a mystery box. Oh, I'm going to invite anybody who wants to, the young or the young at heart, to come and join me up here on the floor. You might want to come closer so you can see all the mystery objects. And I might let you touch them, but no peeking first. Can't take the mystery, can't take it. It's killing me. Okay. So I have in this box some artifacts or fossils from long ago, like dinosaurs. Okay, maybe not that long ago. But some things that you may never have seen before. Do you have a picture? Are you showing me a picture, Scarlett? Larry? She's got a picture of Larry she's showing me. Thank you. Zura knows what this is. I'm shocked. It's a floppy disk. Do you know what we used it for back in the day? Listening to music. I like that. I like that. Anybody else have an idea? Zura's trying. Putting stuff on here. You put stuff on here. That's right. Heather? Putting it in the microwave. Oh, not quite. Not exactly.
Unicorns are pure of heart.
Maybe they do. So anyway, this floppy disk, this one's not quite floppy, but it was called one. There used to be bigger ones that were a little bit floppier. And our computers back then didn't have a lot of storage on them, so you had to store things on here. So you'd put term papers on here, put photos on here, and actually programs. Everything in the world were on these. Did you know that in 1996, I have it somewhere, there were 5 billion of these in the world? And now you hardly see them at all, anywhere, and our kids don't know what they are. 5 billion's not a lot, says Scarlett. It's a lot. It's about, yeah, almost, well, let's see, I think there's 7 billion people on the earth, so almost as many as that. So that is a floppy disk. Okay, I've got another fossil for you. You can tell me what you think this is. Have you seen one of these before? It says Scotch on it. Oh, Heather, what is it?
The thing that you put in those little old movie things.
That is correct. Now, this is actually VHS. It's before DVR, but DVD was a thing that came after this. Yeah, this is VHS. Back in the 90s, before that, we had to wait for things to be broadcast on TV. I know, it's hard to explain even what that meant. But you could actually get a movie. You'd go to Blockbuster and get a movie on one of these things, and then you'd come home and play it. And that was such a big deal when you could actually choose a movie when you wanted to watch it. And this, you'd also put your personal stuff on here, like videos of graduation or videos of your kids. So we have a lot of these now probably gathering dust in different places. This is for storing special things, just like the floppy disk. The VHS tape is for storing works of art, concerts, music, things that matter to us, personal memories. And now you don't see them so much anymore. Okay, here's the last one, the grand finale. You'll have to guess what this thing is. This is courtesy of Jane and Chuck Foley.
Oh my God. It's a telephone!
It is, but it's a kind of,
Does it work?
yeah, it has a special kind of dial. It's called a rotary phone. This thing is a rotary here. Isn't that interesting? That's how you put the numbers in. Who wants to try it?
How do you call someone?
Well, it's not plugged in. It's not plugged in, so you can't actually call anybody. It needs a cord to be able to call. You can pretend to call your mom. Here you go, talk into that bit.
Mom? No. Can you send me some brownies?
Heather's trying to order brownies on the rotary phone. I like it. I think the dialing is the fun part. So Chuck and Jane loaned this to me, and when they gave this to me, they said, okay, but no long-distance phone calls, which only the old people will get. All right, I'm going to let you guys take this downstairs with you so you can play with it down in the classroom. But I also know that Kathy has worked really hard on your lesson today, so I don't want to be a distraction. But the point I'm trying to make by showing you guys these things is that our technology changes, right? The way that we hold our memories, the way that we contact people changes over time, right? And sometimes it changes so much you don't even recognize the old ways. The thing that remains the same, though, is the reason why, right? We still want to keep our memories and our photos and our term papers and things that are important, but we keep them in a different way now, right? We keep them on our computers or on our phones in digital files. We still want to call people, but we don't use one of these anymore, do we? What do we use now? Why not? I think some people still use these. But the thing is, they don't do as much, right? If we could choose, we'd probably choose the one we can keep in our pocket, and we don't have to be connected to the wall all the time. So my point is, some things change. Some things are transient. They change all the time. Technology is always changing, but some things are permanent, and that's our human desires to connect with one another and to keep the special things with us. That's right. This is new technology here. Can't make a phone call on it, but I don't even need a disk. Yeah, it's a whole computer right here, so much smaller too. Well, thank you guys for your listening. And I know that Kathy is waiting for you downstairs to make bowls today. So you've got a really nice RE lesson planned. So you guys can go ahead and go down there now if you want. Thanks for hanging out with me for a little bit. Yeah, take Larry with you.
There's a cucumber.
Larry's a cucumber. All right, thank you guys. Thanks very much. The flowers? Every Sunday, we take time in the middle of our service to have quiet together, a moment for prayer and meditation, a time to reconnect with our inner selves, our highest ideals, our sense of the holy, however it is that we personally conceive of it. So let's begin this time together by closing our eyes and sinking down into our seats, feeling our bodies relax, feeling our feet on the floor, breathing deeply together. In this meditation time, first we'll join in our centering song, and then we'll sit for a few minutes of shared quiet. Then we'll speak to one another of our joys and sorrows, and then I will lead us in a prayer. Our centering song today and for the whole month of May is based on a famous quote from Theodore Parker, an important 19th century Unitarian, that captures our theme of pluralism. It's number 1058 in the Teal hymnal. We'll sing it twice through, but lyrics will be here on the screen, so you don't need to look it up. Remain seated and join in as you like. Let the song gently guide you into our time of quiet. Nancy, would you please go ahead and light that candle to symbolize all of the joy spoken and unspoken among us this morning? Let the candle be a reminder to all of us to feel grateful for the many blessings in our lives. Thanks, Nancy. As you feel comfortable, please join me in the spirit of prayer. Our prayer today is a poem that sounds like a story. And I think it also does a great job of exploring the theme of pluralism. Let me know if you agree. This poem is called That Which Holds All by the late Nancy Schaefer. Because she wanted everyone to feel included in her prayer, she said right at the beginning, several names for the holy. Spirit, she said, Holy One, Mystery, God. But then thinking these weren't enough ways of addressing that which cannot be fully addressed, she added particularities, saying, Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Ancient Holy One, mystery we will never fully know, gracious God, and also Spirit of this earth, God of Sarah, Gaia, Thou. And then, tongue loosened, she fell into naming superlatives as well. Most creative one, greatest source, closest hope, even though superlatives for the sacred seemed to her probably redundant, but she couldn't stop. One who made the stars, she said, although she knew technically a number of those present didn't believe the stars had been made by anyone, but maybe they just luckily happened. One who has an entire ocean of compassion, she said, and no one laughed. That which has been present since before the beginning, she said, and the room was silent. Then, although she hadn't imagined it this way, others began to offer names. Peace, said one. One my mother knew, said another. Ancestor, said a third. Wind, rain, breath, said someone near the back. Refuge, that which holds all. A child said, water. Someone else said, Kuan Yin. Then, womb, witness, great kindness, great eagle, eternal stillness. And then, there wasn't any need to say the things she thought would be important to say, and everyone sat hushed until someone said, Amen. Amen.
Now is the time for our offertory. Our church is a self-supporting organization funded by your generous annual pledge. You may also contribute to our weekly collection plate, which we split every month with a deserving cause. Folks on Zoom can donate either way using the orange button at the top right corner of our homepage at melroseuu.org. For the month of May, the Giving Beyond Our Walls recipient is City Reach, the overnight outreach program our youth have participated in several times in recent years. A program of Common Cathedral, City Reach gives kids a chance to learn directly from people impacted by homelessness and to share with them our donations of clothing and food.
Thank you, Tom. I didn't mention the choir also has today off because of the women's retreat. But it's lovely to hear the piano. It sounds really nice today. For our reading this morning, I have a brief excerpt from what is considered one of the three most important sermons from 19th century Unitarianism. It contains language that is a bit dated to our ears, and maybe it feels a bit dry, but please trust me on this, it'll be worth it. It was very progressive in its time. In fact, it was so controversial that it got its author shunned from polite society for years. This is just a short piece from Theodore Parker's The Transient and Permanent in Christianity, delivered on May 19th, 1841. He writes, "In actual Christianity, that is, in the portion of Christianity which is preached and believed, there seem to have been, ever since the time of its earthly founder, two elements. The one, the transient, the other, the permanent. The one is the thought, the folly, the uncertain wisdom, the theological notions, the impiety of man. The other, the eternal truth of God. An undue place has often been assigned to forms and doctrines, while too little stress has been laid on the divine life of the soul, love to God and love to man. Anyone who traces the history of what is called Christianity will see that nothing changes more from age to age than the doctrines taught as Christian and insisted on as essential to Christianity and personal salvation. What is falsehood in one province passes for truth in another. The heresy of one age is the orthodox belief and only infallible rule of the next. If we are faithful, the great truths of morality and religion, the deep sentiment of love to man and love to God are perceived intuitively and by instinct, as it were, though our theology be imperfect and miserable." This ends our reading. So to start my sermon, I have maybe the most controversial statement ever said from this pulpit. Melrose is a really great town. Okay. I'm being silly. That's not a controversial statement to say here in this congregation. It's a great town, but I have to admit, I had never been here before 7 years ago, and we bought our house, James and I bought our house in Lexington a year before that, so I didn't get the chance to live here in Lexington. Our kids had already started school there in Lexington. I didn't get the chance to live in Melrose, although it's a great town. I live in Lexington. And I have mixed feelings about it. But one of the things I really like about Lexington is the proximity to really important Unitarian history, actually, and I enjoy it. I live 1.8 miles from the farm where Theodore Parker grew up. In fact, I live on the path from his farm to First Parish, Lexington, where he went to church as a boy and as a young man. So I think about Theodore Parker a lot. Sometimes I even imagine him walking by on my street. I wonder, did he ever sit down in what is now my front lawn? Did he ever touch that rock or that tree? He is one of my Unitarian heroes. Do you all have UU heroes, or is that just something ministers do? I think it's really important to think about our ancestors and study some of their lives, especially people like Theodore Parker, because I'm inspired by their example. Like last week in our opening hymn, we sang the words, "Grant us wisdom, grant us courage for the living of these days," just before we did some voting activism. And I feel like, yes, actually, my ancestors in this faith do give me courage. They give me wisdom for the living of these days, especially Theodore Parker. Why? Well, he lived in the 1840s and 1850s. That's when his ministry was most active. At that point, Unitarianism was very popular. We were all over Boston, very powerful in Boston, very respectable, but also very conflicted about slavery. While many of us opposed slavery, we didn't do it openly. Most Unitarians didn't dare preach abolition out loud. because most congregations were full of people or led by people who had made their fortune with cotton mills in the cotton industry, which was a big deal in New England in the 19th century. So that is a history that is still with us that needs reckoning, because many of our beautiful churches were built in industry that was very much connected to the institution of slavery. So it makes it more extraordinary what Parker did, if you understand his context. He was one of the very few who took an open stand, an unrelenting stand against slavery. In fact, the first time I ever heard of Theodore Parker wasn't until I went to divinity school, and people said, "Oh yeah, Theodore Parker, he's the guy who wrote his sermons with a gun on his desk." Now, I'm no fan of guns. I don't own a gun. And I thought, that's very odd. Why would you need to do that? It's because he was such an active abolitionist. There were so many death threats against him that he was protecting himself. And he was not only protecting himself and his family, he was actually protecting freed slaves, escaped slaves, who were living in his home with him. So he was part of the Underground Railroad, and he needed to defend himself from slave hunters, people who were trying to break into his home. So there's a famous couple called Ellen and William Craft. They escaped from Georgia and traveled all the way north and found freedom in Boston, and due in part to Theodore Parker's help. And he lived in there. They lived in his house for a while, and then they became congregants in his church. And they were actually very famous in the 19th century for their amazing escape. In 1850, then, the Fugitive Slave Act was passed by Congress. And I don't know if you remember it, but this is the act that required that law enforcement and citizens of all states, free states as well as slave states, they had to assist in recovering fugitive slaves. So the law actually said that people in Boston had to return slaves to the South if they found them. Parker called the law a hateful statute of kidnappers, and he helped organize open resistance to it. He and his followers formed the Boston Vigilance Committee, which refused to assist with helping fugitive slaves be captured, and it helped to hide them actively. He was really a brave person. A little more on the context. At this time, William Lloyd Garrison, who was the most famous abolitionist in Boston, was actually attacked and beaten in the streets and dragged through the streets of Boston by a Boston crowd and tarred and feathered and nearly killed. So Theodore Parker was not wrong to fear for his life from taking a stand. So my question is, where does all this courage come from? How was he able to do this in the 1840s and 50s? And I look back at this famous sermon, which he spoke 9 years before the Fugitive Slave Act. He said, "An undue place has often been assigned to forms and doctrines, while too little stress has been laid on the divine life of the soul. Love to God and love to man." And I think what he's saying here is that religionists, church people in general, spend way too much time talking about what we believe, spinning theories and descriptions of it, and that these actually all end up to be transient, changeable, ephemeral. In their nature, they're temporary, because they're words that we use to describe our spiritual experience to other people in our time and space. So they are rooted in time and space. They necessarily can't be permanent and transcendent. This is the heart of the idea of biblical criticism, by the way. This is what you learn in divinity school, that all of the books of the Bible are products of their specific context. So the Gospel of John, when you examine it, you see that the person who wrote it for their specific audience. They characterized things because they had a political message that was about their time and their place. And this is true, for everything that is a result of human effort. It's always bound to time and place. These words that we think are eternal are written for specific audiences. But what Parker's trying to do is trying to get underneath all of that and to struggle to separate that out from the thing that is beyond words, really, a reality that we experience, maybe, and that we struggle to talk about. And this is what he says is the permanent part of faith. And he calls it the divine life of the soul, which I think is a really pretty turn of phrase. I don't know if that resonates for you. Does that resonate for you, the divine life of the soul? And then he defines that divine life of the soul as having two parts, love to God and love to man. Now, this is kind of dated language. It's not maybe the words that you would use to describe your spiritual life. Personally, I can't abide the phrase love to man because it doesn't include more than half of the human population. So I think Parker meant love to humanity. And I can absolutely get 100% behind that. That is really important in my spirituality. And then there's this phrase, love to God. And how do we feel about that phrase? Does that resonate with you? Some of us, a few of us. Many you use don't believe in a personal God, a God who is a person or something like a person. Maybe we were raised with the idea of a person who's very judgmental, that sort of God, a punishing God. Or maybe we were just raised with the idea of a male God, and that doesn't work. Or maybe we don't want God to be human at all. Maybe we've lost our faith in humans and we want God to be something else. Maybe we just don't like that word. It's all understandable. I think, if I want to give Parker some credit, maybe there's something else really behind that phrase, love to God. I like to think that he's talking about something permanent, something bigger. Maybe we can think of it as love to earth or love of nature or deep spiritual love for all creation. I think Parker's trying in his 19th century way to get at the core of religious experience, to get at what we even now mean when we say the word spiritual. And I think he's right, at the very least, to use the word love for both of those things. You know, he says that the divine life of the soul is constituted in love, right? Two kinds of love, love for humanity and love for the world. And I think he's 100% right there. Love of people, love of nature. Love is the thing that is greater than all of us and yet present in each of us. We struggle for words to describe our spiritual experience, but that's what it means to be human. Of course we struggle. We experience something profound and we want to tell each other about it. So we struggle for words, and words, of course, only make sense in our own time and place. And that's one of the reasons we have pluralism as a value, because we understand how rooted those things are. And it helps us to be humble, to value pluralism, to understand that other people and other cultures will have other expressions of spirituality. For me, this is really helpful context when we approach re-examining our UU principles and values, like the whole denomination has been doing now for longer than 2 years, about 5 years this whole process has taken. And I'm going to go more into the specific content of the proposed changes to our values, or at least our value statement. I'm going to talk about that specifically next Sunday, the second half of this two-part series. But this sermon is just about the why. Why do we constantly have to change? Well, maybe it's not so constant. Our 7 principles are from 1985. And if you can let yourself remember that it was a very different world in 1985. We had rotary phones. We had VHS tapes. The 7 principles were a technology for those times. They were a language that made sense, frankly, to brains that grew up in those times. Our brains, the older among us, were trained in those times. That is our place and time, our culture. But it's not the same for people who might be younger than us. But we have this nostalgia, a connection to things from our youth. We want to go back maybe to when we feel like things may have been more simple, but we know we can't. We can't live there. I mean, do we really want phones that had cords? I remember what it was like to have my parents pull on the cord and say, "You're done now, cut off." There was no privacy. So, we love our new things. We love new technology. The world moves on. It's a mixed blessing. But I believe, when it comes to our value statement and our principles, we have to listen to the younger people because it is their world. If we want young people to be attracted to our churches, if we want to retain them, if we want our faith to survive to the next generation, we need to use words that make sense to younger people. So my point in all of this is the same as Theodore Parker's point from 180 years ago. What's important is not the transient, not the doctrines, theologies, descriptions. It's what lies at the heart, underneath all of that. It's our openness to and our embrace of what is at the core of our spiritual experience. That's the permanent, the divine life of the soul. It's that thing without words, beyond words. It's the passion that you have that makes you stand up to bullies, or interrupt a racist joke, or help those who need you, or bring soup to your neighbor, volunteer here at church, write letters to voters in Pennsylvania. You have love at your core. It's who you are and what you are. And you come here to this place for companionship, for wisdom, for the courage to live out that love in these troubling days. I hope you find it. I hope however you describe it, however you understand it, the thing that matters most is that we, like Theodore Parker and all of our you ancestors, that we have love at our core and we let our actions flow from there. Amen, and so may it be. Let us close today with our closing hymn, which is right on target. It's Love Will Guide Us. It's number 131 in the gray hymnal. The lyrics will appear here, and Tom will play for us. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please remain standing and join with me in our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you. You may be seated. Our worship service has ended. If you would like, please join us for refreshments in Parish Hall, which is right that way, after a lovely postlude from Tom. Thank you very much, Tom. And thanks to everybody for joining us for worship.